Hey gang, I'm going to do the childhood comics tag. It was started by Gory J, which is funny because around here my pals refer to me as Bory J, because, well, you'll find out. But the J for me stands for just stop making videos, dude. Like, what is it? But that's what they always tell me. So let's get started. The first comics I owned were these little Masters of the Universe books that came with the He-Men. Oh, I loved some and I didn't like others. It wasn't until years later that I realized that the ones I loved were drawn by Alfredo Alcala. I wouldn't have known that at the time, obviously, but I've grown to love him so. From teeny tiny comics to a giant oversized comic. This is Superman versus Muhammad Ali. I got this in like a gift pack. My dad worked for a company that took part in this thing. You would go to the Stratford Festival and there would be this little Christmas show, and then a Santa would come out and sit on a throne and call out the kids from every family who worked for this company. And if you were 9, 10, or 11, you got specific gifts. So when I was 9, I got a flashlight. When I was 10, I got a phone. When I was 11, I got like a tie. But before that, you would get this gift pack, and the first one I got had this Superman versus Muhammad Ali in it, which I hated. Like, why does Superman have to be beat up? Why does he have to be beat to a pulp? Like, I only knew Superman through Superman 3 at the time. But it's like, I knew that he should be the one to win. I've already told the story of the first book I bought on my own, which was Mad Magazine. But I didn't tell the story about Cracked Magazine. Because when you're a fan of Mad, you can't wait the month to get the next issue. You've got to buy the Cracked that's out. So this was the first issue of Cracked I got. I didn't know at the time this was the issue where Don Martin defected to Cracked from Mad. It has Don Martin in it, and I just figured, well, Chevy Chase is in Vacation and he's in Fletch. Like, what's the difference? Don Martin's in Cracked and he's in Mad. What's the difference? But at the time, he was having a dispute with Bill Gaines at Mad about the return of artwork, about his name being used, about royalties for reprints and so forth. Basically everything that Jack Kirby was dealing with a few years before. No one really cared about Don Martin, though. This is the first proper superhero book I got with my own money. It's Marvel Tales 216. I was attracted to it not just because it was Spider-Man and I couldn't find any other Spider-Man comic, but it also had Punisher, this is my introduction to Punisher, but it also has a story in the back. Come on. By Fred Hembeck. And of course I loved funny stuff, and this was funny, so I was instantly a Fred Hembeck fan. And then What The started, which was comedy and featured Fred Hembeck, so I was obviously going to start picking that up. The first one I got was issue 1, but it's buried, so this is the only one I could find. And of course around this time, in addition to Mad and Cracked, there were the comic book 3-packs, which I tried to get as often as I could. I spent a lot of time in the hospital, not that I was sick. My grandparents were in a car accident, and they weren't expected to live, so we spent basically Friday night through to Sunday night visiting them in the hospital. And you know, you need something to take the edge off. You need a comic book or two. You know, I would sit there in the stupid freaky waiting room watching GoBots, trying to enjoy myself, JC and the Wheeled Warriors, trying to enjoy myself. But I needed comics. On Saturday nights we would eat at St. Hubert's, which was beside the Toys R Us. Then we'd go over to the Toys R Us, and sometimes they would have comic packs. I don't have anything representative of what was in those packs, but you know, you'd get Web of Spider-Man. I got a couple of Thundercats. But mostly just like Star Comics and stuff like that. But you know, whatever you could get. But my grade 2 teacher, she collected Mad. She collected Superman, so she was very supportive of my collecting ways until I ruined one of her Mads, and then things kind of cooled off. My grade 3 teacher, she hated Mad. She hated comics. She hated cartoons. She hated movies. And she hated me. So that was not the best year. But then the next year, I had a teacher who loved old movies, loved old cartoons, loved comics. He was basically my best friend. And the sadder thing was, I was his best friend. Because he had no one to talk to about any of this stuff. We would sit and talk about Rocky and Bullwinkle and like Errol Flynn movies and Marx Brothers and old serials and all this junk that like no one else cared about. And so at about this time, I had a friend whose brother collected comics. And my friend was like, oh, there's like a book that's like the Joker's origin, and it's like the Joker, and he's like a villain in it, and he's like mean, and he like shoots people. I'm like, oh, well, that sounds cool. Maybe I can borrow it sometime. This is the actual copy. I borrowed it, and I looked through it, and it's like, oh, this is an adult comic. I was already well aware of adult comics, because my parents bought me a like comic book starter kit from Sears. It had like 20 comics, a box, bags with little like suffocation warnings on them, and like a little how-to collect guide. But most of the comics were like Watchmen and V for Vendetta and Andromeda. These adult comics that a fucking 8-year-old would have no interest in at all. Parents, don't worry about your kids finding adult comics, because they will be bored to death by them. It's like, these are people in superhero costumes, and they're just standing around. What is this crap? But also in that Sears pack was this issue of Who's Who. And I was hooked on the history of the DC Universe. I couldn't get enough of it. I was like, why are there so many Batmans? It's like, oh, it's because it's Earth 2 Batman. I was like, Earth 2, my god. I just loved it. So there was a brief breeze through my childhood collection. I should have shown the first X-Men I got. I should have shown the first back issue I got, like the real bagged, boarded, in a bin back issue, but that stuff's all buried. So thank you to Gory J for starting this tag. Thank you for making it an open tag. I've enjoyed the videos I've seen so far. I hope to see plenty more. And if you still wonder why I'm known as Bory J, just rewatch this video a couple times. You'll be lulled into the deepest of sleep.